Since abandoning my maxed Inferno account a couple of years ago, I've been on a mission to complete the entirety of old school RuneScape from scratch. 200 mil all, Grandmaster helm, the collection log, and a whole lot more. In just the last video alone, I beat the Inferno and I got a whole bunch of combat achievements. I also got another champion scroll just by sheer chance, and I made massive progress on my side goal of fishing a million Karambwans, gaining over 350,000 of them alongside 3 duplicate heron pets. I also got a duplicate tangle route and I hit 80 million farming XP. My 2 giant goals right now were to finish off maxing, and then I'm going to be back at TOA going for the 2000 kill count cape. However, I've decided for this video I'm going to be taking a little bit of a break to catch up on some collection logging. I also have a bunch of sweeping up to do with some old content getting new updates. One of which is the Motherlode mine. I did greenlog this one ages ago, and I also got every unlock including 2 prospector sets so that I had each variant. However, there was an update a while ago that added a new hopper to the top of the mine. And so, because of that, I spent half a day here getting all of the golden nuggets that I needed to unlock it and recomplete the place. With that quick one done, I then headed over to the ancient caverns. There's 26 very quick log slots to get from here, being the ancient pages. Now, I could do this one passively over time, but I wanted to boost my log number a little bit. So the method that I did was to just go down the stairs in the entrance, stand by the skeleton, and then go back up. I then waited out the 10-minute NPC aggression timer, which I used the plugin for, and because I waited out that timer, I can now search the skeleton over and over and over again. I did have to hot worlds every time though, as it does have a fairly long respawn timer, but that's basically it if you want to do this yourself. You just search the skeleton and hope to get the log slots. Sometimes skeletons do spawn, but if you stand on the same tile as me, it'll get trapped and it can't attack you. However, you do still take a little bit of damage from searching the skeleton though, so you have to stock up on brews and wear some defensive armor. Justicia is probably the best option, but I'm not gonna bother buying a set just for this. And after just a few hours, I did get every single page that I needed for the first greenlog of the video. It also meant that I'd completed the notes section in the book and I could store it inside my POH. Another update that came into the game was the Steel Ring, which drops from the Deranged Archaeologist. This guy didn't have any unique drops, so I'm glad Jagex at least gave him something. It's another quick log slot to get to, as it's only a 1 in 43 chance. And it is also technically a best in slot item for melee defense in the ring slot. But I imagine that's really only ever going to be slightly useful for early to mid game irons. But that does technically count as another greenlog done, and now I'm moving on to Soul Wars. This was the very first pet hunt that I ever did. The crates that you used to get from here had so much good loot in them, but after a summer sweep up to combat bots and redistribute certain items, they got nerfed massively. I did already get the Ectoplasmator as well as the pet, but I didn't unlock the cape, so that's why I'm back here for the greenlog. Another small change that they made to this place was allowing the Salve amulet to work on the ghosts, so it did speed up boosting the points a tiny little bit. I did the Dolo method again for this one, and after only a few hours of grinding this out, I got my second best in slot item of the video. This has the best prayer bonus for the cape slot. But again, just like the Steel Ring, I'm not sure it actually has any real use. If you do know of one though, leave a comment for me. And I will say it does actually look really nice and it's a decent fashionscape item. Another quick mini game to greenlog that I haven't touched before is the gnome deliveries. Luckily for me, because I'm not an Iron Man, I don't have to bother making all of the gnome food and I can just buy it on the GE. I wasn't really sure how much I'd end up needing. There isn't really much information out there on this very niche minigame. So I bought 20 of each possible food. If you're wanting to do this yourself though, I'd recommend just getting about 10 of each. And if you actually enjoy making the gnome food, then I think there's some good money to be made. I ended up buying some of this stuff for some very extortionate prices, and some of them wouldn't even sell. So there's a potential moneymaker here for low levels. Now the minigame itself is quite simple. It's basically Uber Eats and you're the delivery guy. And when you make a delivery, you get an item as a reward. Each gnome kinda has its own drop table, and so only certain ones pay out the unique items. That said, after doing about 10 deliveries, you get a reward token, which essentially allows you to deny certain deliveries and take on the jobs that you actually want to do. Because of that, it massively speeds up the entire process and lets you just focus on hunting the specific drop that you're after. For me, to greenlog this minigame, it took around 4 hours I think, and I ended up making a tiny little bit of profit. The last 2 items were the gnome scarf and the gnome goggles, and you can actually combine the goggles with the bomber cap from Enlightened Journey, which is a nice little bit of fashionscape and another completionist task that isn't tracked anywhere. I put it back in the POH to save on some bank space as well. So that's another greenlog down, and I'm now on a streak of completing minigames. So because of that, I thought I'd keep it going, and I paid a visit to the Shades of Morton. I bought the gold locks off of the Grand Exchange so that I could get the best in slot coffin, which stores all of the remains that I'm going to be burning for loot keys. If you were to do this as an Iron Man, you'd have to kill all of the shades yourself, but as a main account, I can buy all of the remains on the Grand Exchange. When you burn the remains, you get a bunch of nice prayer and fire making XP along with either a loot key or some GP. There's a bunch of different tiers too, so the lower level remains give bronze keys and they go all the way up to gold keys. If you're like me and you're wanting to greenlog this place, you're gonna need a bunch of keys from every single tier. The locks only drop from their specific tier chest, so bronze locks from bronze chests, gold locks from gold chests, you get the idea. With my first set of gold keys though, I did end up getting a whole bunch of log slots. The flame tier bag, the gold locks, and the bloody notes, which gives me a scroll that I can read to permanently unlock the ability to make blood bark armor. I can also store those notes in the POH later on. And a few chests later, I also got my first Amulet of the Damned, which, if you didn't know already, buffs all of the different barrow sets with different effects. A few chests later, I also got my first fine cloth, which is used to make split bark armor. You get tons of fine cloth though, so it was an easy log slot. If you don't necessarily care about green logging, but you want to boost your log number up a little bit, then I can highly recommend doing an inventory of keys here. These ones only took me like 10 to 20 minutes, but to get the green log, however, it's gonna take quite a bit longer. The next inventory didn't get me any new log slots, but I did get an elite clue. And if you didn't know, the shades here are one of the best ways to get elites for a main account. And some of the top collection loggers have gotten themselves 200 mil firemaking XP here. And that just so happens to also be my long-term plan. But for now, I'm really only here for the green log. Next, I started to burn some of the lower tier remains for all of the different locks. Luckily, they're all 1 in 60 from their respective chests, so to go on rate, you really only need a couple of inventories of keys. The process for each one is exactly the same too. You collect the remains, you burn them for keys, and then you open up the chests. Loot from the lower ones do clog up the bank slots and inventory, so whilst I plan on showing all of the loot from this video at the end, I did actually drop most of the junk from these lower chests on a free-to-play world. After getting all of the lower tier drops, it was time to focus solely on the gold keys now. I dumped another 10 mil into the remains and the pyre logs, and then headed back. I'm looking for the other book that drops the Swamp Bark rune scroll, as well as the Zealot set. I figured I'd just burn all of the remains in one go this time, and then open up all of the keys all at once. And shortly after hitting 15 mil firemaking XP, it was time to claim the missing log slots. I got the Tree Wizard journal first, and then I slowly but surely got each piece of the Zealot set, which are the rarest drops that you can get here, at a 1 in 128 rate. You don't really see anyone wearing this set, but it does have a cool passive effect, letting you save bones and ensouled heads at a 5% rate. And that bonus also stacks with the Chaos Altar bone saving effect too. I am trying my best to keep my bank clean now, and also fill up every single container in my POH as one of my completionist tasks, so that's where I stored them. Another Greenlog down, and so next I decided that another minigame that I haven't touched before is Mastering Mixology. It is kind of a shame that I got 99 herb lore before this one came out, but it's still going to be very useful for the 200 mil XP grind eventually. If you haven't tried this yet, I do recommend it as the rewards are insanely useful. I bought a load of herbs from the Grand Exchange to knock this out all in one go, and you turn regular herbs into 3 different pastes, and then you use that paste to make potions here. I will admit that I did end up buying way too many herbs for this. I'd love to specifically tell you how many it took me to Greenlog, but honestly, I have no clue. Something I did notice though whilst doing this minigame was just the sheer amount of bots. I saw maybe 3 regular players total and over 100 unique bot names, all level 3 with XP only in herb lore. Usually, with the grinds that I'm doing, I don't actually see like any bots at all, but this place was excessive. Anyway, if you have no clue what I'm doing for this minigame, you take those pastes that I was talking about, and then you create potions according to their recipes, and you then have to use the designated workbench to make them. Like everything in RuneScape, it's confusing as hell when you do it the first few times, but then you can kinda just turn your brain off. It's honestly not that bad. It can, however, get a little bit boring after a while, but luckily, it doesn't take massively long to unlock every single reward. Potion storage is a massive bank space saver, although it does kind of mess up the bank tags plugin that I use to gear quickly, so that's something I'm still getting used to. The prescription goggles have a 10% chance to save secondaries. The chugging barrel lets you drink multiple potions at once at a bank, which is really useful for pre-potting. And the alchemist outfit is completely useless. It has no bonuses or anything, but they are log slots and they are good fashion scape. The amulet gives you a 15% chance to create an extra dose when making potions, and you charge it with amulets of chemistry. This one's highly recommended for any account type. You get to save money as a main account and materials as an Iron Man. Then finally you have the reagent pouch, which stores all potion secondaries into one inventory slot. So you have more space when making potions, and it makes it slightly more AFK. With all of those items combined, it's going to make 200 mil herb lore a lot more enjoyable in the long run. And yeah, that's another Greenlog down. And because of all of the new updates to Varlamore, I decided that I was going to stay here. I'm gonna need one of those new pendants to teleport around the new expansion, so because of that I bought a set of Blood Moon and some Burning Claws to camp a Moxley Atoll. I also figured that the pet should be a quick one too. The kills are always under a minute, and on average it's like 40 seconds. So at a drop rate of 1 in 3,000 in average luck, it's around 50 hours for the pet. The first drop that I got was the pendant at 5 kill count, and then I got quite lucky on the only other unique item that this boss has, which is the Glacial Tomotlis, or better known as the Boppers. If you're just getting into PvM, then I can recommend this boss. You just have to avoid the ice attacks and try to DPS as much as you can. The reason that you bring Blood Moon armor here with the Maracas is because the boss is weak to crush and it has negative flat armor bonus. So anything with multiple hit splats work really well here. The Blood Moon set has a 33% chance to hit 1 tick faster as well. And the only other setup that beats Blood Moon here is a Scythe with either Torva or Inquisitors. Moxley Atoll also has a few combat achievements which I knocked out fairly quickly. The only one that kinda gave me an issue was the speedrun time, but I bought some of those new surge potions that regenerate your special attack. I paired that up with the Burning Claws and that got the job done. Once you do get used to this boss though, you can basically kill it without taking any damage. But if you're like me though, you start to lose focus when grinding out a boss for hours and hours on end, and you end up taking damage anyway. I was really hoping that I would not go dry here. I mean, it wouldn't be the worst one to go dry on time-wise, but it's not exactly a fun one to do for thousands of kill count. Luckily though, after around 2,000 kills, it happened. Holy, there it is. There it is. Every time I get a pet, every single time I get a pet, I always see the collection log pop up and I'm like, what the hell is that? Even though I've been here for 2,168 kills, I just don't expect it to actually happen. So when it does, I'm just completely like flabbergasted. That took me by surprise. I was not ready. Every time I try and grab the microphone as quick as I can, you can probably hear it. I try to cut it out a lot of the times in the videos, but finally. Sticking with Varlamore, it's time to complete all of the new quests that came out with the expansion. I started off with Scrambled, and this was probably my favorite out of the 3 new quests. I'm a big fan of the smaller, more funnier quests, and I don't think I've ever really spoken about this, but I'm just not a massive fan of the lore in Runescape. I just cannot take it seriously or get immersed in it like other games. So funny little quests like this are really the only time that I'm ever reading the dialogue. After that, it was Shadows of Custodia. Another shorter quest. It had a little bit of a horror atmosphere, which I did like, and it had some great Slayer XP. Probably a good one to get done as soon as possible on a new account. Then, finally, the Final Dawn. Lots of nice boss fights in this one and some fun puzzles. The highlight has to be the final boss, and I do hope they reuse some of those mechanics elsewhere. The Arkham Blade and all of the various XP drops were a nice reward too. That's it for the regular quests, but there was also another mini quest, and it leads me to my next Varlamore minigame Greenlog, which is Veil Totems. This is probably one of my new favourites as well. I feel like it's mostly aimed at Iron Men, but it's also decent for main accounts. You run around crafting these totems and then you decorate them with unfinished bows or shields that you fletch. There's a nice route that you can take around the entire Auburn Vale area, and it's kind of like an agility lap. By the time you get back to the start, all of the rewards are stacked up on the ground for you to take. And if you wanted to, you could just sit by a single totem and then woodcut and fletch. But I wanted this done as soon as possible, so I bought all of the supplies that I need for a massive opening. I decided that I was going to stack 100,000 rewards. I wasn't really sure how many I'd need to get everything done, so I decided to just go for a nice big clean number. I'll explain all of the rewards that you get in a minute, because if you're watching this far into the video, you'll probably enjoy the completionist series that I have going on so far, so please do give the video a like. I also just want to take a little bit of time out to explain where I disappeared off to these past few months. I didn't plan to be away for this long at all, but life just got really busy in general. And then I got really ill with an infection, and it just made me not want to log into the game like at all. It's probably the biggest break that I've had from the game in the past few years. It's not all bad news though, because by the time I started to feel better, me and my wife decided it was finally time to get ourselves a puppy. His name is Leo, and he's a Samoyed. Now, I've owned dogs before, but I've never owned a puppy. I knew it was going to be hard work, but I think I still underestimated the amount of time and effort that goes into raising one. It's almost 24/7 attention to make sure he's living the best life possible. But he is becoming more confident and independent day by day though. And he is doing quite well with all of the training that we've given him so far. If you want to see more of him, then join the Discord. We have a pets channel in there, or you can follow me on Twitter. I also post updates on what I'm doing in game there too. Anyway, back to the rewards. There's only a few collection logs from Veil Totems, which would be the Fletching Knife, which speeds up cutting logs, the Ent Branch, which can be cut into atlatl darts, And then you have the bowstring spool, which basically holds bowstrings in a single inventory slot, kinda like that reagent pack from Mastering Mixology. The only difference with this one is that it can be upgraded to hold more bowstring, so as a completionist I needed to get 6 in total. Unfortunately, I only got 4 from the opening, but you do also get research points by doing this minigame, so if you do go dry, you can buy some of the rewards. So that's where I got the extra 2 from. You upgrade the spool just by using one on another, and it goes all of the way up to holding 100,000 bowstrings. Something else that you can get as a reward are the dirty arrow tips. These are self-explanatory, and you can get dragon arrow tips from this, which I imagine is pretty decent for an Iron Man. The last log slot to get is the Green Man mask, which has another completionist task attached to it, where you stick a few hundred tree leaves onto it to unlock different cosmetic options. I'm not really a fan of this item though, so I stuck it straight into storage, as well as the Veil Totem's notebook. Something else on my to-do list that has been bugging me for a little while is Barbarian Assault. I need to get level 5 in every role still for the diaries, and there's a bunch of easy log slots to get here too. So I figured I'd drag along some clan members so that we could help each other out with torsos, diaries, and I think a couple of other people were going for pet gambles. A lot of people seem to really hate Barbarian Assault, but if you're doing it in voice chat with people, it can actually be fun sometimes, believe it or not. Eventually, I will need to go for the pet here, and I'm hoping to do that with my clan as well. I might start stacking some pet gambles and try my luck in a video every now and then, but saying that, I do have a lot on my plate already. I need to finish Slayer, and Sailing is coming out soon too. And not only that, but I have my 1 million Karambwan goal, and at some point I need to get back to the 2000 TOA grind. So I'm fairly busy already. But anyway, there's a bunch more log slots knocked out, and some more log slots in the storage containers filled. Speaking of the Karambwan goal though, I did make some absolutely gigantic progress on this goal. I'll show off how many I have when we get back to the Dopamine tab section. But just as a reminder, the only reason that I'm doing this is so that I can bank 200 mil cooking. I don't exactly need a million of them. I think the real number is like 980,000 or something. But I can't get that close to a million and not do it. As I said before, my health took a little bit of a nosedive, and so the only thing that I wanted to do when I did log in was AFK. So that's the only reason I've gained so many. I did also get another couple of duplicate heron pets, and I would keep in my live reactions to these, but I sounded like an absolute ghoul. I did end up hitting 50 mil total fishing XP as well though. The other side goal that I'm always working on is farming. With the Varlamore expansion, there's a new regular tree spot, a fruit tree spot, and a new Kalquat spot, so the daily gains will be increasing. I've also started to do the Celastris saplings. I'm not really sure why I wasn't doing these before. They're 14k XP a day, and they also profit because you fletch the bark into battle staffs. Hespori was also paying out for a change, so I got multiple bottomless buckets, which are currently around 1 mil, and I also got another duplicate Tangleroot pet at 91 million XP. And for the last farming update, I'm finishing this video on 100 million XP. Halfway to the 200 mil XP goal, where I'm finally going to be able to stop doing my daily farm runs. And sorry to keep doing this to you, but before I show off the loot and the dopamine tabs, there was one last thing that I got up to, which was Gridmaster. A temporary game mode that came out of seemingly nowhere and worked kind of like Leagues, but a little bit different. I was a bit worried about this one because I didn't have any time at all to plan or keep up with all the info about this, but luckily it was all quite straightforward. Unlike Leagues where you have a lot of different routes and builds to make, Gridmaster was very linear. Some people even managed to complete the board in a single day, and I've seen an 8-hour speedrun of it. For me personally though, I took my time with it, and overall I enjoyed it for what it was. That said, I feel like once you got 1 or 2 PVM upgrades, it was basically over. and once you finish the board, you were left with a really powerful account, but nowhere to use it. It would have been nice to port over some of the echo bosses from last league or something like that. I did see some clan members who kept playing it to practice some endgame content and help others with raids though, so that was nice to see. After completing the entire board, I went straight back to the main game where I cashed in all of the points for all of the different rewards. It has a bunch of Fashionscape items which can be stored, and then some familiar looking pillars and torches that you can put up in the chapel room of the POH. So finally, here we are, the loot tab. This one comes out to around 270 mil. And like usual, it's mostly locked into the herbs that I was farming and the battle staffs. But there is still a lot of various bits and pieces from all of the different grinds that I was doing in this video. A good chunk of which came from Shades of Morton with all of the rune and addy armor, as well as a massive chunk from the 2000 and Moxley Atoll kills. Not all of this is profit though, as I did spend quite a lot on supplies, and after tax was deducted, I had 264 mil, and combining it with the current cash stack, it came out to 577 mil. Okay, so that's the loot tab. Let's now have a look at the dopamine tab. Massive progress yet again for the Karambwan stack. I only need roughly 250,000 more to get this little side goal done. I did also find some more Dragon Implings alongside another Lucky Impling whilst playing my 100-hour UIM account build, and the caskets are still going fairly strong. AFK and Karambwans are actually really good for passive clues. I can highly recommend it. I did also get a bunch more mystery boxes too, and I'm getting close to triple digits on those. And if I scroll down, there's also some other bits too, like Anima Bark, which I got from the Veil Totems. I haven't even started Forestry, so that's going to be a nice little bonus. And there's also a bunch of these Mixology pastes, which I did make way too much of, so I'm probably going to have to use them up at some point. And I have my daily sand getting stacked up too, which I figure I may as well collect. In the next video, I'm going to be finishing off the Million Karambwans stack and getting my first 200 mil skill. And then once that's done, I'm going to be finishing the max cape, and I'm hoping to have some bonus videos out in between too. But we're going to have to see, as I'm still quite busy. I also want to give a very quick thank you to my incredibly patient channel members. Henrik the Epic, Siotos, Madman, Tom M, Scooter McGavin, and Kyle Henry at the supporter tier. Amity, Misks, and Hot Lizard Girl at the patron tier. And then a gigantic thank you to Casp, Dustis, and Crimson at the benefactor tier. Thank you all so much. I'll see you in the next video.